Waldy and Bendy.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast They Could Not Stop, Waldy and Bendy's Adventures in Art. I'm Victorian art critic of the Sunday Times, and my co-host is, as always, the formidable and wonderful Dr. Bendor Grosvenor, author of The Invention of British Art. If that's not on your shelves already, it really damn well ought to be. Now, this is a very special edition of the podcast because we're actually going to be coming live from an important event, the Gloucester History Festival, up on the stage in Gloucester, talking live to a fantastic audience of keen art and history-loving types. We were asked by the festival's director, the extraordinarily talented Dr. Janina Ramirez, TV presenter, historian, medievalist, to do the podcast live from the festival. So we tried it, and what great fun we had, as you're about to hear. So Gloucester, of course, is a very important city in all sorts of ways, but for us it was important because it played an important part in the English Civil War, that hugely dramatic event that kicked off in 1642, which had a huge impact not only on history, but also on art. So what was that impact? Well, that's what we were going to try and discuss at the Gloucester History Festival. So there we were, Bendy and I, up on stage, introduced by the wonderful Dr. Janina Ramirez, and then we just opened our mouths and unleashed ourselves on the poor, but perhaps occasionally happy people of Gloucester. This is what happened.
Hello, what a gloriously thank you. Yeah, clap for you too. Clap for everyone, love it. Hello everybody, thank you for joining us at Gloucester History Festival's Spring Weekend 2026. I am Janina Ramirez, I am the lifetime president of the festival. Yes, they got me to commit for life. Really not sure what I was thinking when I said yes, but hey, you've got me forever. It is such a joy to have left behind a long, dark winter and to be emerging into the hope of spring here in our beautiful Blackfriars. For nearly 800 years, this building has been full of voices, debates, and discussions. We're continuing this long tradition and adding to the layers of learning that the very oak and stones of this structure has absorbed down the centuries. We are a part of history. And today, two of my favourite human beings will be bringing their wisdom to Blackfriars. You are in for a treat, ladies and gentlemen, a live recording of Waldy and Bendy's Adventures in Art podcast. For any self-respecting art lover, their podcast is the go-to. They've discussed everything from history's worst haircuts to the invention of the devil, and they bring their decades of collective experience to listeners with a lightness that means every episode you get swept up in their passion and enthusiasm. Let me introduce them to you. Bendor Grosvenor is an art historian and former art dealer whose incredible eye meant he discovered lost masterpieces by Peter Paul Rubens, Claude Lorraine, and Peter Bruegel the Younger. He completed his PhD at the University of East Anglia with the title The Politics of Foreign Policy, Lord Derby and the Eastern Crisis, and has been a regular on our TV screens with Britain's Lost Masterpieces and Fake or Fortune. He's written a number of books, most recently, The Extraordinary Invention of British Art. I recommend this book to anyone and everyone. It is simply one of the best books on British art that you could get your hands on. Now to Waldemar Januszczak. I must add that when it comes to Waldy, I am hardly impartial. Since the moment I met him, I knew we were long-lost soulmates. We share similar Polish histories and have spent a year filming a series together. But let me try and give you some facts. Waldemar is a Polish-British art critic and documentary maker, a twice winner of Critic of the Year for his role at the Sunday Times. He was also head of arts at Channel 4, bringing us, among other things, Glastonbury Festival. Thank you, Waldy. He's been on our screens for decades, educating us about art. I think he invented the talking to the camera over the shoulder technique, which I love and steal often. He's also written amazing books, and both our speakers tonight will be signing copies in the old kitchen off the Blackfriars courtyard. Please go out the rear door and visit the Waterstones bookshop, and then you can get your books signed by them. And of course, we'll be taking questions at the end, so do think of something challenging to get their brains ticking. Two of my favourite people in my favourite place talking about my favourite thing. Bendy and Waldy, it's over to you.
Waldy and Bendy.
Yeah, they don't make theme tunes like that anymore, do they? Yeah, well, thank you so much, Janina, for that very gracious and lovely opening. Waldy, in case you haven't clocked it yet, it's me, basically, Valdemar, and I think he's Bendy, is that right?
I'm your flexible friend, yes.
Yeah, the podcast is fantastic fun to do, and the reason it's fantastic is because we have something different between us. Bendor knows everything about everything. He's a super brain, and I'm just a sort of yappy pole. But between us, hopefully we get some stuff talked about that's worth talking about. But particularly here, Gloucester.
Yeah.
Gloucester, we're here to talk about the Civil War. And I mean, you know, you could not be in a more pertinent place, could you, Bendy?
No, I'm so pleased to be back here. I was here last year, Wald. I'm always your warm-up act. Here I am. But Gloucester is, as you all know, I'm sure, a very important role in the history of the Civil War. Gloucester was really the most important city to hold out against the king in 1643. And I just thought we would actually have a little demonstration of who we're talking about here. So we have got, ladies and gentlemen, the King, Charles I, on his horseback there, and Oliver Cromwell on the same horseback here. I'm just interested, since this was a great parliamentarian and Puritan city. Now, who's still on Team Parliament here? Raise a hand. Oh my goodness. Yes. Puritans here, not surprising, in a form of priory building. Well,
Yeah.
and who's on Team Royal?
That's more like it. Yeah, that's what we want to see. Long hair, it always wins.
Which
yeah.
team are you on?
I'm impartial, of course. I always am on this podcast, but basically I'm impartial towards liking the royals better. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you're a royalist by upbringing. I'm a royalist by nature, by conviction.
Well, do you know what? Well, I'm going to tell you, because you're always telling me how posh I am on the
Well,
podcast.
you are posh. What are you talking about? You're named after a racehorse.
That doesn't mean you're posh. It just means your dad had a weird moment when you're born. Charles I is my 10 times great-grandfather.
And he's not posh. Yeah.
But that is because I'm descended from Charles I through Charles II, who had 14 illegitimate children, was it 13? Which means technically that literally everyone in this room is also descended from Charles I.
Yeah.
So those of us who are descended from Charles I, we're taking it personally against those of you who raised your arms and said you were parliamentarians.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to try and...
Well, then I'm a turncoat because my 10 times grandfather, I think, was a potato digger from somewhere on the eastern steppes. So nothing royal about me at all. But I like the look, you know. I'm very fashion conscious, as you can see.
So what are we going to do today?
What are we going to do? I mean, we're in Gloucester. This is the epicenter of the Civil War. Very important place to be. Mm-hmm. But I thought, well, we'll show some pictures, obviously, and you're going to tell us your brilliantly intelligent, insightful things about some of them. I thought I'll say some intelligent, not so insightful, but noisy things about some other ones.
Okay.
And then, is it right that we're going to get people to choose? Is that?
Well, we're going to find out what is the best painting from the Civil War period to illustrate all the history of this wonderful place. And we've chosen 3 each, and I've chosen 3 really, really interesting pictures, and you've chosen, I'm not quite sure, but we'll unfold that.
You know how to hurt a man straight from the off, don't you, Bendy?
And at the end, we'll ask you to decide if that's all right with you.
But they're all pertinent, and I think very, very interesting. And some of them, and my ones certainly have a little Gloucester angle.
Okay.
Like, you know, trying to get in with people. It's a Gloucester angle. And at the end of it all, we're going to have a vote. So we are officially going to choose the best Civil War artwork.
Yes.
So there you are. That's a momentous event here. It'll be on the BBC News tomorrow, I think.
So people of Gloucester, this is your chance to undo centuries of shame for having backed the wrong side in the Civil War.
Go on, Bendy. You go first.
Should we go first? My first one, ladies and gentlemen, is, of course, by the greatest artist who ever lived, as Wilde would freely agree, Sir Anthony van Dyck. And I've chosen a painting. The nickname of this thing is called The Great Peace. And it's a massive group portrait by Van Dyck, painted around 1632. And obviously, here's Grandpa, Charles I, and here's all your great-grandmother, Henrietta Maria, okay? Charles II, he who couldn't keep it in his trousers, and from whom we're all descended, and the Princess Royal, Mary on the side. So now, this is a fantastic picture because it's basically the Civil War in a nutshell, or the causes of the Civil War in a picture. And it's Van Dyck's first great portrait of the king when he comes to London. Charles I, a vain man, a small man, and he wanted to turn to art to make himself look a little bit more powerful and kingly. And he searched Europe for the best artists he could find, the best portraitists alive, who was Van Dyck. And over he comes, and this is the first thing he paints. And isn't it extraordinary? So we see the king there, and the precedent, this picture was to go in Whitehall Palace. And those of you who've been down Whitehall today will know Whitehall Palace from the Banqueting House, which is the great Inigo Jones building, which still survives to this day. Not much of the rest of the palace does, because it was burned down. But the picture was supposed to be a great sort of happy family portrait of the king. And it's important to notice that the precedent for the portrait was another group painting, which was also hanging in Whitehall Palace, actually being painted on the wall by Hans Holbein about 100 years before. And here we are, Henry VIII, his father Henry VII, his mother Elizabeth of York, and Jane Seymour, mother of Edward VI. And so there was a precedent for impressing visitors to Whitehall Palace with a really stonking portrait of the king looking kingly and powerful. And we know that visitors, when they saw the Holbein, used to tremble before it, because it was so lifelike and realistic.
I still do. You know, the cartoon of it, the drawing for it, that's often shown at the National Portrait Gallery.
Yeah.
It's standing in that sort of amazingly powerful image of a royal presence.
Yeah, imposing
fantastic.
thing.
Of course, the thing's been destroyed, but you must have all seen that cartoon. It's brilliant.
Yeah, amazing thing. So now Van Dyck's twist on it is that he decides to really emphasize the sort of happy family side of things. And he also emphasizes significantly the fact that Charles I had freely been able to have heirs, which of course Henry VIII was struggling with. And fascinatingly, recently discovered was Van Dyck's own little oil sketch for this painting. Oh. It turned up in an auction in Norfolk a few years ago, and I underbid it.
Ah, amazing.
So, one I missed, one that got away.
Yeah. What did it go for?
A lot of money. And it was recently acquired by the Royal Collection. Superb. So now what's really interesting about this, is, and folks, can you see that originally the idea was to make it even more happy family? So little Charles there is clinging on his dad's knee, and his dad got his arm around him. But the picture, politics intervened. And this is where it gets really interesting, ladies and gentlemen, because I want to show you, can you see in the background there, what's that behind?
Is that Whitehall?
What's that behind the king's shoulder?
The view through the landscape, you mean?
Yeah.
Is it, I don't know, is it Whitehall on the river?
Anyone tell him? Westminster. Thank you, Janina.
Westminster.
It's the Palace of Westminster. And this building here, anyone know? Not the tower. St. Stephen's Chapel, which by that point was the House of Commons.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, here's a little close-up. That's what here's what we see. So that's the House of Commons there on the left-hand side, Westminster Hall, Westminster Abbey. Okay, so Whitehall Palace, ladies and gentlemen, is up the river. Here's Whitehall Palace, Banqueting House, House of Commons. So the picture is up the river from the Palace of Westminster. And the reason, folks, that the House of Commons is in shadow over the king's shoulder and in light is the crown is because we're just beginning the king's period of personal rule. 1629, parliamentarians, all you lot, you Puritans, have got yourselves in a terrible flap about the king being too Catholic. And he's married to a Catholic, Henrietta Maria, so they start being troublesome. King dissolves Parliament. And that's why we see it in shadow there. And one final fact for you, Wild, if I can. I worked out recently where this picture used to hang. Nobody really knew where it was. In the inventory of the king's pictures in Whitehall Palace, it's in this gallery here. It's written in the long gallery towards the orchard. Now, the point is, this gallery runs the direction facing the House of Commons. And there's only one place you can put a massive picture like that, and that's at the end of the gallery. So the idea was that visitors would see the king having closed Parliament, ruling as a happy family in charge of a happy nation, and they would know that literally behind that piece of canvas was the House of Commons itself, closed. So it was a kind of like a trompe-l'oeil effect.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
Fascinating. It's like those religious scenes you see in Venice and stuff where, you know, it looks like the niche is a window opening out onto the scene beyond.
Yeah.
Real sort of Renaissance gesture.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Good. So I'm in pole position then.
Fascinating.
Good.
But can we get another slide up then?
Yes.
So you remember what Bendy's just shown us. This is Charles I a la Bendy, so posh, kingly, ruling over it. And Flemish. He talked about Holbein, German. We're talking about foreign artists who came to England to paint. Without them, British culture would be so impoverished, almost as impoverished as if Yanina Ramirez had never been born, or, you know. People came here from other places and they enriched the culture enormously. But what I like, and this sort of slightly paradoxical view I have, what I like is that the person who emerged at this time, who I think is more important than Van Dyck, is William Dobson. The great William Dobson. I've talked about him here before. I will go to the grave talking about William Dobson. And although this wonderful book, this superb tome, The Invention of British Art by Bendor Grosvenor, gets most things right, one thing it gets chronically wrong is that it only devotes a page and a half
2 pages.
to William Dobson, which is a crime against culture. But we're going to right that wrong right here, right now. So, voila. What does William Dobson bring to the party? Well, look at it. Bendor said that the king wasn't all those things that Van Dyck suggested he was. He wasn't tall, he wasn't handsome, he wasn't kingly. According to Dobson, he's something else. Look at that wonderful look of reality. That's that British truthfulness that you get from a native artist. And my whole point here really is that William Dobson, born 1611, died 1646, a very short life, was the first native-born artist of genuine, deep talent. I would say close to genius, given how little chance he had really to express it. And the amazing thing is, the gods somehow played a fantastic hand with him so that he dropped into British culture at exactly this point. He had a career basically that lasted 4 years, but they were the years of the Civil War. And he was here, a native painter, the first native painter in that kind of position to record the Civil War and to put a face to it. And to me, that is already a massive achievement. And on top of all that, look how damn good he was. So when he looked at Charles I, he saw a human being, he saw sadness, he saw something almost pitiful. So that's the kind of innate quality of Dobson's touch, a sort of robust, four-square truthfulness. But if we go on to my first picture that I want to propose...
Sorry, just to say, so this is painted in Oxford, just down the road, at around the time of the Siege of Gloucester. So
Well, 1643 was his year. Yeah. So Siege of Gloucester was, August to September 1643. Yeah. All the pictures that I'm going to be showing are probably 1643. It's that year. So the first year of the king's stay in Oxford, and the year when Dobson was really at his peak.
Okay.
Because as soon as the war started to go bad, all sorts of things happened. But this is when he was in his prime. And this painting hangs in Windsor Castle now, so it's still in the Royal Collection. It's a wonderful thing. But let's move on. Okay. We need to move on because look at this. Right. This is an English painter in 1643. This picture is massive. I mean, it's 6 foot by 7 foot. It's the size of a big double bed. It's by far the largest painting that I think any native artist had painted till then. It's certainly up there. And it's a complete mystery. So it was acquired by the Ashmolean a couple of years ago in lieu of income tax, inheritance tax, one of those deals. And they argued rather feebly, I think, for who the characters were in it. Now, 2 of them are obvious. So far left is Prince Rupert. We all know about him. He was at the Siege of Gloucester, the king's relative who sort of led the royalist forces. On the right is Sir John Russell. Now, Colonel John Russell was a famous colonel in the royalist forces, also fought probably at Gloucester. And this portrait, this picture is in the Ashmolean now, but there are other portraits of him by William Dobson. We'll see one in a minute, which is in fact in the family of the Spencers. So that's in wherever they are. In
Althorp.
Yeah, Althorp, exactly. Anyway, so we have a Russell on one side, we have Prince Rupert on the other. The question is, who's the guy in the middle? Who is the guy in the middle? Now, this is where it gets interesting, because according to the Ashmolean, when they bought this is a character called William Legge. And Legge was made governor of Oxford in 1645. And so the idea proposed by the Ashmolean when this was unveiled a few years ago is that this William Legge in the middle had been made governor of Oxford, and therefore Dobson painted this picture where William Legge is pledging his allegiance to Rupert and John Russell. So I disagree with all of that, and I'm going to propose another identification for it, which I think you'll see is the right one. So if we just move on to an interesting point.
Breaking art history.
Next one. Look at this. Look at this. Both probably autographed William Dobson, seemingly the same picture. Okay? Uniquely in Dobson's career, 2 versions of the same image. Why? Uniquely in his career. And the one on the right is signed, is got a label. You can see it underneath the column in the middle. There's an inscription which says Prince Rupert, William Murray, and Colonel John Russell. Now, William Murray, I spent an awfully long time trying to find William Murray. Who the hell's William Murray? There are some potential William Murrays who were royalist soldiers, but none of them really fit the bill. And it's just a strange thing that his name is kind of invented for him. So I began to look carefully at who he really might be and what this really might show. And also the other thing was the Ashmolean picture was dated, according to them, 1645, which is near the end of Dobson's stay in Oxford. So that didn't fit to me because most of his great art, great paintings, ambitious paintings were painted earlier. So if we now move on the left is William Legge. This is the guy that the Ashmolean is saying is the chap in the middle of this picture. I mean, sorry, I know Dobson was capable of a little bit of invention, but I mean, that is going too far, I think. To pretend that he was ever anything like that seems to me to be a curatorial nonsense. We'll move on to the next slide. Sorry, Bendy's my slide man now. This is the painting that the Spencers own of John Russell. So I just put it in there so you know that this is actually Dobson, a single portrait of him. Brilliantly done. And then we move on to the very next one. But this, who's this, Bendy?
Isn't that the Earl of Bedford, or the Duke of Bedford?
It is the Duke of Bedford, who is also called?
Russell. Someone Russell.
William
Russell, okay.
John Russell had a brother, William Russell, the first Duke of Bedford. Painted by Van Dyck.
Yes.
This is a picture that came up at Christie's, I think, a few years ago. It is probably school of Van Dyck, but it is Russell. It bears a very strong relationship to the big double portrait that's also in the Spencer collection. He's a fascinating character. And you know why? Because he started the Civil War as a parliamentarian. So although his brother, Colonel John Russell, the one we saw a minute ago, was a staunch royalist, William Russell was a parliamentarian until 1643, when he came to Oxford to try and effect a peace, to try and persuade parliamentarians to accept the king, to forgive the king, and swap sides, basically. He swapped sides, he joined Prince Rupert's army as cavalry, and for 5 months he stayed in Oxford and was loyal to the king, and most notably played a prominent role in the siege of Gloucester. So William Russell played a prominent role in the siege of Gloucester and also the first battle of Newbury. So he was a genuinely keen royalist for those 5 months between basically July and December of 1643. Right. So, fascinating character. And then after that, he fell out with the king again and went back to being a parliamentarian. So having been loyal to the king for a bit, he changed his mind. So we have this extremely specific possible timescale for when he may have encountered Dobson. Now, next slide, Bendy. So what I did, I got the very, very best scientific brains here, the highest technology I could find. Basically went on ChatGPT and asked if they took the Van Dyck portrait of Russell, made his hair shorter and flipped him round, what would he look like? Right? More or less the same age, and he would look like this highly scientific ChatGPT image on that. So if we now go to the very next slide.
Okay. Oh my goodness.
Look at this. Look at this, folks. I mean, I think even on the ChatGPT level, that's pretty convincing. So what am I saying? I'm saying that the painting, this great painting that's in the Ashmolean, that it actually shows the two brothers interrelating. Look at them. There's something going on there psychologically between the two of them. Rupert's watching. William Russell is accepting the commission. He's dipping his cockade in the wine as a mark of his loyalty. His brother's accepting him. So this picture must have been painted in those 5 months when he was a royalist. And the other painting, the one that was I showed you before, which incidentally belongs to Pete Townsend of The Who, and I've been trying to get him to film that as well, but so far no luck. That other painting was presumably painted for him. So Dobson was commissioned by the brothers to do these pictures and then made a replica, which incidentally is also unfinished, because in the Pete Townsend picture, the glass of wine isn't finished yet. And it never got finished, because by the time Russell went back to London and joined the parliamentarians again, things had moved on. So what we have here is actually an incredibly sophisticated, no, forget Dobson, the plain, blunt-speaking, plebeian British artist, but a great sophisticated play as well, over a big picture. So I'm proposing this, not only as a fantastic bit of identification, but as an amazing image for a British artist to be producing in the 1640s at the height of the Civil War, putting a face to one of the most momentous events in British history.
Fantastic.
What do you say to that, Bendy?
Well, a round of applause for the identification. Fantastic. And I have to confess, I love this picture, and I think what makes it extremely important and pioneering in British art, as you say, is the fact that the three characters are so busy engaging with each other. And that's what Dobson, I think, brings to the party. And I think it's probably not an accident that he was an English artist, and he's really the first person in oil paint to make English sitters interact like this. Because imagine you're Hans Holbein or, bless him, Sir Anthony Van Dyck. I mean, they could all sort of speak bits of English, but it must have been a barrier to actually interacting with your sitters. And Dobson comes along and he has a chat, and there you go.
Yeah, but isn't he good so quickly?
Yes.
The interesting thing as well, because by the time Oxford comes around, 1642, he's in Oxford. That's 10 years, 12 years of his career before that nobody knows anything about. I mean, I'm surprised you haven't found a few. I mean, you're brilliant at sniffing out lost masterpieces. There must be 12
loads.
years of Dobson's career somewhere out there.
Yeah. Unless, of course, one possibility is he'd actually trained abroad somewhere. And that Dobson's early oeuvre is, in a townhouse in Paris or something like that. We just haven't found it yet.
Well, so we should find something for you. One of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast is I thought I could trust you to find me some Dobsons.
Keep looking. Now, should we move on to my next picture?
Yes.
Thank you. I think this is actually it's a drawing. So I'm slightly cheating here, folks. But I think it's absolutely fascinating because it helps us really, really understand what one of the prime causes of the Civil War was all about. This is a drawing by Inigo Jones, the King's architect, fantastically important architect in the history of British architecture. And this is his drawing for the west front of St. Paul's Cathedral. Now, the king, one of the reasons Parliament got so cross with him, and he decided to close Parliament, was that the king had this policy called the beauty of holiness. And I mentioned this briefly at my talk last year, in fact, if anyone was here. And what he wanted to do was make churches beautiful again. So we've had the Reformation, buildings like this, which we're sitting in, which had been a priory, a monastic place, and then get recycled to become private houses. And those that remain tumble down. Nobody thinks the interior of a church is important to beautify anymore, because religious art is idolatrous, don't forget, and the Reformed Protestant faith. And this really matters if you're the King of England, because something we often forget in this country is that we are actually officially a theocracy. The king, the queen, is the supreme head of the Church of England. So Charles I, so we have supreme leaders, okay, basically.
Like America.
Like America, yeah. Charles I was the supreme leader. And if the churches are falling down and you're head of the Church of England, that matters to you because it's an important instrument of your power. So you don't want the church to fall down. So one of the churches that had most fallen down as a result of the neglect after the Reformation was St. Paul's Cathedral. The spire had come down. They used to hold horse markets in the nave. Did you know that?
I did know.
So Charles gets Inigo Jones to come up with a design for the West Front. Now, there's a problem with this design. And can anyone see what the problem with this design is?
It doesn't fit what's already there.
Doesn't fit what's already
Aisle, two naves.
In a particularly, there's something stylistic about it which is a real problem.
It's Catholic.
It's Catholic. If I put up a picture of Inigo Jones's design for the West Front of St. Paul's Cathedral next to the Church of the Jesuits in Rome, can you see the problem? Okay, so at a time of religious tensions, Charles I, grandpa, who was a short man and I think, honestly, didn't have a very big brain, sorry to say that, but he thought it would be a wizard idea to make Protestant churches look like Catholic churches. Okay? So you can see ours is not going to end well. And there are immediately protests. So he goes ahead and has the West Front rebuilt. This is what's actually built in the end. And he doubles down on his faux pas by putting these Corinthian columns around the front. Yeah. Now, Corinthian columns, do you know there's a particular problem with Corinthian columns, Wild? And I know you study your Bible, so you can tell us what it is.
No idea. Corinthian columns don't. No.
In the Bible, ladies and gentlemen, Corinth is the most wanton town in the whole world. Sinful, all sorts of bad things go on. And we might think this is crazy, but at the time it really mattered. So he decides to have a Catholic church in Puritan London and put Corinthian columns on the front. And he's so deaf to this that he then puts his statue on the top. Okay? So like, here I am. So there are protests, massive protests. They call it Romish dress. And now this is one of the key triggers of the Civil War. We tend to think of it as a battle between parliamentary liberty on one side and royal tyranny on the other, but actually it's a bit of a culture war. I think that's how we'd recognise it today.
Definitely.
And if you think...
Art-loving king.
Art-loving king. And if you think, ladies and gentlemen, this is all really, really silly, the idea that religion and art and imagery combined together can cause so much passionate tension and conflict, then we just have to look around us for contemporary examples.
Yeah.
Okay? Doesn't that illustrate the point? Yeah. This is not far off what Charles I was doing in a kind of architectural way.
Yeah.
So.
And listen, St. Paul's Cathedral is a popish building. It's got a dome, it's not Gothic, yeah. It looks as if it could be in Rome, you know. I mean, it's interesting how people got away with it, really.
Yes,
really.
Well, we had the Civil War, and we decided to get over ourselves after it. It's amazing how quickly it blew itself out, even here in Gloucester, ladies and gentlemen. We got over it very quickly. And then Wren comes along, Charles II's restoration, and they basically decide to have St. Peter's Basilica in London again.
And he cheated, didn't he? Because he sent in lots of fake designs, or designs that he didn't then follow. So he put in designs that looked quite Gothic, and then he built something completely different.
Yeah. So, what's your next? Should we move on to the next one?
I'm staying, just for a change, I thought I wouldn't talk about any old William Dobson. I'll talk about my William Dobson,
Another
the William
Dobson.
Dobson that I always love and adore.
Another Dobson.
I'm sticking with the William Dobson theme because I know the people of Gloucester want more of him. And also, this is like, one of the things I keep doing is proposing identifications for characters in Dobson's art. Because of the Civil War and what happened at the end of the Civil War, there was quite a lot of turmoil, and a lot of people who might have been painted by him didn't want to be associated with him. People started to run away. They didn't want to be beheaded like the king. So there was quite a lot of his sitters have been lost. Their identification's gone. And this is a painting that hangs in the Courtauld Gallery, and it's called, has been called, until very recently, An Old and a Young Man, which is indisputably what you have in front of you.
It's a really perceptive title, isn't it?
But it's not enough, is it? It's not enough. So who are these old and young people that we're looking at? Well, I was unclear. I mean, there's one of the great things about Dobson is that he leaves clues in all his pictures, little, sometimes quite clunky symbolic clues as to who the sitters are. So here, for example, as you can see, top right, there is a sort of figure riding a kind of ugly face, monstery-looking thing. What is that? And this is a very famous emblem in all Renaissance and Italian art, let alone English art. What can that be? What might Cupid be riding, and what would it mean? Come on, guys, you're from Gloucester. If I say to you, love conquers all, Cupid riding the sea monster, love conquers all. Amor vincit. It's one of the kind of classic iconographic ideas in art. So love conquers all, being symbolized up there on the right. Behind him, behind the two guys, again, uniquely in a Dobson, it's a river scene. Now, you have to look quite carefully at it. You've got to poke it. When you go to the Courtauld, you've got to go really close, really peer in there. But you'll see it's a river. Not only that, if you know Oxford at all, when you look at that river scene, it looks a hell of a lot like bits of Oxford where the Thames flows through. So that gave me my first suggestion. Why is the Thames in it? Why is the river there? And love conquers all, what does that mean? And then, completely by accident, I wandered into a place called the Waterman's Hall, which is the guild headquarters of the watermen. So that's the London guys who used to ferry Shakespeare across the river to the Shakespearean theatres. So they used to take people across the river at that point before the bridges were built. And the water boatmen were the scoundrels. They were the taxi drivers of 16th century Britain. And they were known as drunkards. They were known as sort of liars, corrupters, cheats, took all your money, just like taxi drivers to this very day. But amongst them, there was one heroic water boatman, a guy called John Taylor. John Taylor, who called himself the water poet, was not only a water boatman, but he is also probably the most prolific poet that Britain has ever produced. So he wrote around 200 books, or pamphlets, and he was a staunch royalist, supported the king through thick and thin, but came to Oxford in 1642, very near the end of his life. He was born, I'll tell you exactly when. He was born in 1578. So he comes to Oxford in 1642. And the king makes him his water bailiff. That basically means that he was in charge of cleaning the river. So there was all sorts of dead bodies, dead horses, all sorts of stuff floating through the Thames in Oxford. His job was to clean it out. Yeah. But he was known as the water poet, and most of his poetry was pro-king, and a lot of it was about being a water boatman. Now the guy on the right, he looks a lot like a character called Sir John Denham. Now, if we perhaps flick the next switch. Okay, so this is the portrait I saw in the Water Boatman's Hall on the left of John Taylor.
John Taylor.
The one on the right is Sir John Denham, who is a famous lyrical poet. Now, he wrote a very famous poem called Cooper's Hill, which is the first topographic poem in English literature in which the river, the Thames, is used as a kind of symbol of the might of Britain, the might of the king, and it becomes this rather strange, typical sort of metaphysical poem about how the river is the king, is the rulers of Albion. So we've got two guys who wrote poems about the Thames. One's a poor plebeian, scruffy water boatman. The other's Sir John Denham, who used to be governor of Falkirk Castle and various other things. Big deal in the Royalist army. It's a bit like Bendy and me, yeah? One's a man of the people, the other's a man of the upper echelons. But they're united by their love of the king. What's brought them to Oxford? They both ended up in Oxford. Both of them were published in Oxford in 1643. Most of their books, The Cooper's Hill, was published in Oxford in 1643. And what we're seeing here is a picture about our love of the king can unite these two different guys. Beautiful bit of symbolism. Look at that hand gesture there, where he puts his hand on old John Taylor's hand, because love conquers all. And it's not just a romantic love here, it's the love of the king. Now, come on, isn't that a fantastic painting for an Englishman to be doing in the 1640s?
Very good. Another terrific piece of sleuthing.
And by the way, the court have accepted my identification. And if you now go and see this picture, it says John Taylor and Sir John Denham.
Really? Fantastic.
Thank you.
I think they should make you a fellow of the Society of Antiquaries for that, Well. That's the closest you get to an art historical Oscar.
Well, you're in that queue way before me.
I know, I've been blackballed long ago.
You've had more sleepers than the Wichita lineman.
Fantastic. It's so engaging, that picture. Can I move on to my final one, because time is pressing. Now, I have really cheated, ladies and gentlemen, because I think actually the best Civil War painting is not painted during the Civil War at all. In fact, it's painted some 100 years later on. And I'm going to put it up now. There it is. Now, some R's. I was wondering how famous this picture would still be, because back in the day, it used to be so famous, the biscuit tins, tea towels and everything. Who's been to see it? It's in the Walker Art Gallery in Liverpool. Excellent. And I chose it slightly in honour. We've got the best dressed man in Liverpool is here in the audience, ladies and gentlemen. Chris, thank you very much. So this is from your hometown, Chris. And I just loved it. Do you like this picture, Weld?
No.
No? Oh, okay.
I love hearing you talk about it. I love everything about it except the picture.
Oh. Yeah. Can we just gorge on the cuteness and the wonderful, just the pathos in the picture? It's just so fantastic. So it's called "And When Did You Last See Your Father?" And it's so many of the themes we've been talking about today. Obviously, these guys are Puritans. Look, he's in what's called Van Dyck dress in this period. It's painted in 1878. And here, look, can you see the feet in this picture, top right-hand corner, ladies and gentlemen? That is the feet of a Van Dyck portrait. So we're definitely talking royalists. And that must be the father, who the the Protestants here, and the Puritans, look, there is his hat, Puritan hat. Yeah. They're looking for this guy's father. And can you see he's holding a casket of letters? And so they've obviously got some evidence as to where the father is. And I just love the sinister title and the way that the inquisitor, the parliamentarian inquisitor, he's looking very he's doing his best to look benign and friendly and welcoming, isn't he? Yeah. And the poor little kid, you can just see by his pose, he's doing his best, isn't he? He wants to please the inquisitor because children are honest and truthful, aren't they? And it's just, I know it's Victorian and sentimental, and you're going to tell us why that's all bad in a moment, but I'm such a sucker for this kind of thing. I love it. And then we've got this rather sinister dude here in armour and his big spear. And some people say that he's comforting the little girl, but actually I think he's just saying, you're next. Yeah. So, they're definitely going to get the information out of him at some point. Sorry.
The hat, the big hat on the foreground.
Yeah, that's his hat there.
Yeah. Which is his hat? Oh, okay. Yeah.
While I cough, do you tell them why it's a bad picture?
No, I'm not saying it's a bad picture. It's just not my cup of tea. It's just too scheming. It's emotionally manipulative for me. But it's very, very popular, so I'm not going to knock people's taste. You like it, and usually you're right about these things, so what can I say? Is that a biscuit? Is that a biscuit tin that it appears on in the next slide?
That's a biscuit tin, yep.
Yeah, well, that's its home, isn't it? Let's face it. Not the Gloucester History Festival, but this delicious box of shortbreads. Yeah.
I just think it's so interesting. It actually shows how art changes over the centuries. Sorry. Despite the brilliance of Dobson and Van Dyck we've been talking about, all those pictures are commissioned by rich people, and they are serving a purpose for that rich person, right? But by the time the 19th century comes along, art has totally changed in what it expects from an audience, and it invites audiences to participate much more. So you get this kind of fascinating narrative picture.
I like the Gainsborough touch. The little boy is very Gainsborough. And it's, do you know what it reminds me of a little bit? The creepy Inquisitor. It's the Caravaggio, the Calling of St. Matthew. Do you know where St. Matthew is sort of leaning over as well, and God's walking in here? And there's a very much, with these frieze-like paintings, I like the fact that the action sort of unrolls across them, doesn't it? Yeah. The very format demands a kind of rolling action. But that's about all that's good about it.
It has, as you can see from the biscuit tin, it became very famous. And it has a great afterlife. It was often parodied in political cartoons. There's a great one after the war, Second World War, when they're still looking for various Nazis. And I think it's in the Daily Mail by someone like Jack. And it's, "When did you last see your Führer?"
Oh, dear.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. Tell us what your next choice is, man.
Well, listen, we have. I can tell from the people's faces that they're hungry for not just more William Dobson, but the William Dobson, right? As I think I've been here a few times, and I always make the same joke about the guy in the middle looking like Jay Rayner. Am I wrong? It's Jay Rayner, but he's also William Dobson. This is a painting that hangs in Alnwick Castle. I believe it to be amongst the greatest British self-portraits ever, but certainly of the 17th century. I mean, nobody painted anything as psychologically complex, as technically brilliant, and as sort of surprising as this. For a cocky British artist to emerge in the Civil War, to show himself like that as this handsome figure in the middle. I mean, he's behaving like an Italian here, isn't he? This is such an un-British thing to do. But then, when you actually look at what's going on in this picture, it's also got a fantastic, sophisticated storyline. And this is what I love about William Dobson. He's got that English earthiness, the sort of four-square thing, but also he's obviously very learned. He's been taught a lot about Baroque art, Baroque ambitions, and his art is very sophisticated, these little allegorical meanings. So, one of the things that we know Dobson did in the English court was work for Francis Klein, who was the guy that put together the great books and inventories of the Charles I collection, right? So Charles I had all this fantastic art in his possession, and Klein did all sorts of things. He made tapestries and whatever, but it meant that Dobson had access to all the great Renaissance art that was coming into Britain at the time. And as we know, it wasn't just Charles I, there was various other collectors who were bringing these amazing things in. And one of the things that was in Charles I's collection was the next slide. Now, Gloucester, 10 points extra if you tell me who painted this. Let's hear some shouts. Come on. Give you a clue. Venice. Titian, no. Did I just hear? Veronese. 10 points extra, way up the map. Veronese, the greatest cloth painter of all time, I think. This is Veronese, and the subject is the choice of Hercules. So this, as I said, this hung in Charles I's collection. It was part of the collection. And Hercules in the middle, in kind of unlikely Venetian dress, but he is Hercules, is choosing between vice and virtue. Now, he's chosen virtue on the right. Vice is this sort of figure with the naked woman sticking out from under her dress. But no, he's gone for virtue. So in this great choice, Hercules has gone for virtue. And this is the model for the Dobson picture. So if we now move on, everybody knows two of the cast
in the Dobson triple portrait. It's William Dobson in the middle. It's Sir Charles Cotterell, who was a very loyal servant to the king, looked after the king's theatre. He's the one on the right. We'll see him again in a minute when the picture comes back. The issue with this picture has always been who's on the left. And for a long time it was suggested it was Balthazar Gerbier. Now, Balthazar Gerbier was this sort of man about town, a kind of royalist court figure, bouncy, large, drank a lot, so he's a sort of obvious choice. But I'm proposing that this is actually Nicholas Lanier, who was a court musician, and that's a self-portrait by Lanier on the left, and that's another portrait of him a few years later, so it's the same character. He was an important... Sorry?
By Jan Levens.
Yes. Important figure in British culture at the time. Van Dyck painted him in a fantastic picture that's in Vienna, and there's just another one knocking around at the moment, which I saw the other day in the Frieze Art Fair, another portrait. So he obviously liked to be painted, particularly when he was young.
Yeah.
He was, more importantly, perhaps in terms of British culture, apart from the fact that he was a renowned musician, he was the guy that brought the Mantua collection, wasn't he, to Charles I. So these great paintings like The Triumph of the Caesars by Mantegna, they arrived in Britain because Lanier had gone to Mantua and organised this deal. Right. I am suggesting, and I have suggested, that he's the figure on the left. So if we move on, I did the scientific experiment.
Again?
I did the scientific experiment of taking the Lanier portrait and feeding into the scientific force that is ChatGPT the idea, can you make him 20 years older and fatter? And it came up with that, which is not as convincing, I think, as William Russell. But anyway, it's good enough. I think it's good enough. And I don't think there's any real doubt that that's who it is. That the figure on the left is Nicholas Lanier. And so what we've got here, if we click on now again, so what we've got here is William Dobson setting himself up heroically as the kind of modern Hercules. He's making a choice. Shall I go for the guy in black, the loyal royalist, the simple life, the moral certainty of that? Or shall I go for this, as it was described at the time by Aubrey, this fat, lusty man on the left who's holding a figure of Venus and leaning on a bust of Apollo, because he's a sort of poetic figure. Yeah. So it's a choice, and he's very firmly gone for the loyal Sir Charles Cotterell. So this is a self-portrait in which he presents himself again as this loyal servant of the king. What a fantastic painting it is. Yeah. Honestly, all go to Alnwick and see it. It's big, and it's just such a heroic, thrilling image. And, I am by instinct and by origin, I should be a parliamentarian. Bendor is the royalist among us in terms of origins, but I just can't get out of my head the fact that I think this man is such a brilliant painter, such a heroic presence, and how lucky England was that suddenly, after all this time, Guy appears during the Civil War for the 4 years when it counts. He died the year after it finished, in poverty, forgotten. He was here. He put a face to the Civil War. He painted some of the most sensationally exciting pictures of the times, and it's an absolute affront that he only gets a page and a half in this otherwise superb tome, which you should buy, and you can get signed afterwards, I think, in the book.
I think after your superb sleuthing with the help of ChatGPT, in the next edition of this, I'm going to give Dobson another half page. You've really put him up there.
There's no bottom to your generosity.
It's a cracking picture.
Listen, guys, we need to move on. The time's running out.
Yeah.
Shall we have a little vote then, Bendy?
Waldy, do we have time for a couple of questions?
Yeah, we'll get the result and then we'll do some questions. Is that all right?
Oh, you want the result?
Because we're gonna ask your. You gonna do this or shall I?
No, you do it, Bendy.
Okay.
You're the.
Okay. Those of you who thought I won, raise your hand. No. Okay. Should we go through them? Should we go through left to right? Okay. Yeah. The Great Peace. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, Van Dyck's struggling.
I can't see any hands. None of that.
Some. Okay.
I can't see any.
The Dobson in the middle there, the wonderful Oxford picture. Okay. Dobson's already beating Van Dyck. All right. The Inigo Jones drawing. No. Okay, right. Okay. And then the Dobson left-hand corner there of the poets. All right. I think the middle Dobson is still in the lead. Okay, my cheating 19th century painting from the biscuit tins. No, I've tried everything and I've failed. Okay, and the Dobson self-portrait. Oh,
Yeah, come on.
it's a knockout for the Dobson self-portrait.
It's a fantastic painting. Really, really worth going all the way to Alnwick in Northumberland to see it. You won't be disappointed. I mean, it's such an exciting thing to have produced.
Great.
And thank you so much for supporting it in the right way there. But any questions? Any questions? We're here to...
6 minutes for a question.
Yeah.
We got some microphones roving about. Anybody want to ask a question? Raise a hand.
Come on, guys. Yeah, the handsome guy with the glasses at the front.
Here.
Yeah, let's start with the good-looking guys. Come on, let's over here.
Very kind, thank you. I just wondered, do we know who Dobson trained with? Because his incredible technical ability, particularly his fabrics, is extraordinary.
It is. No is the short answer to that. And obviously, with a lot of these early painters whose histories are undocumented, there are sort of things written about them that are pretty predictable. So he was in the studio of Van Dyck, they say. I don't think he was. But the names that have been mentioned is this mysterious painter called Dumoulin. Now, there were a lot of painters called Dumoulin, Moulin, variations on the name Miller, but they were all Dutch or Flemish, which does suggest, given what he became, that he may well have trained abroad, I think, and may have gone to some sort of Flemish enterprise. And he also, the other person that he's associated with is Francis Klein, who was the great designer of Mortlake and things. But nobody knows for sure. He pops up out of nowhere, he disappears into nowhere, and it's obviously part of the glorious mystery of him. But he must have learnt somewhere else, just a part of, even though he must have learnt so much in the Royal Collection itself by being intimately close to it, he must have studied under somebody pretty damn good, I think.
Great.
Yes, that gentleman.
Thank you very much for introducing me to a lot of those pictures I didn't know. But I was just thinking, when it comes to the English Civil War, I can't bring an image to mind. There isn't a sort of an image that you would immediately associate with English Civil War as you might do with other conflicts and other periods in history. Or am I wrong? Is there something that you think that is the image of the English Civil War?
Well, we tried to find one. I don't think there's no image of the fighting that I know of. The only place that I know of that shows the fighting is in the backgrounds of various William Dobson portraits, because I told you that they're quite symbolic. There are quite a lot of his portraits have a column behind, and in the landscape behind you see fighting forces. So you see people sort of cavalry charges and things. And that's about the closest it gets. I mean, the conflict itself really wasn't recorded in paintings. You just get the characters. And there are more Puritan, and there's a famous Robert Walker, isn't there? Cromwell was painted a few times. But it's a lacuna, there's a sort of massive great hole in British culture where it wasn't recorded, which is why we need to thank God for every single touch that William Dobson made, because the only thing we've got when it comes to putting a face to the Civil War was what he left behind, really, I think. And Bendel's coming to agree with me, as you see. Yeah.
Well, I just think it's, actually, if we're looking for it's extraordinary that they're in Oxford, busy thrashing the hell out of places like this, and then they go home after a hard day's fighting and have their portraits painted. I mean, the idea that you would do that today is so gauche and extraordinary, isn't it? But portraiture served such an important purpose back then, to do with memory and legacy and projecting your status.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that painting of the three of them, with William Russell dipping his cockade in the wine, I mean, that's almost an evocation of the Civil War struggle. An amazing picture for someone to come up with at that time. Amazing. Come on, let's hear some more questions. There's
one or two
such
more.
an intelligent. There's a young lady here with her hand up.
Can I say something?
Hello.
She's given me the mic. Who's painting the parliamentarians? Because there are no examples of the other side. And I just wondered.
Well, the extraordinary thing is that at the beginning, Van Dyck dies in 1641 before the conflict proper kicks off, but he paints both sides. And I think the odd thing is, I think he would have carried on painting both sides if he hadn't died or tried to leave. Robert Walker becomes the closest thing the parliamentarian side has to a portraitist, but he paints people as Van Dyck's. So do you remember the two engravings of Cromwell and Charles I put up on horseback at the beginning? That the idiom that created by Van Dyck and obviously perfected by William Dobson of portraiture at the time became established not side by side, team by team. So they were quite happy to accept that Van Dyck's poses were portraits of powerful people, and you could be a parliamentarian and have the same pose, or a royalist and have the same pose. It didn't really matter. That's one of the extraordinary things about how sort of fluid everything was at that moment.
But it's also true that they're much rarer. The Puritan images of the Puritan fighters are much rarer, and that is, of course, because the Puritan mindset was against art. I mean, almost by definition, they didn't approve of imagery, and one of the things they held against the king was the fact that he'd spent so much money on art. So it was almost inevitable that there would have been less. There was a lot of sort of pamphleteering and, you know, scurrilous engravings and all that sort of went on.
Yeah.
But in terms of set-piece portraiture and pieces about the war, almost none from the Puritan side, very little, with Robert Walker being an honourable exception.
Really, if you want to go home and Google afterwards, folks, Wenceslas Holler does these amazing little tiny engravings of little riots at the time of the Civil War and not quite battles, but you can see some of the turmoil. It's the closest we get to a visual reportage from the period.
There's a young lady here. I think it's the last question. Is that right? Okay.
You can hear. I know you do a podcast together, and we've watched you both individually on the telly. Are you going to do anything together on the television, please? Please, please.
Listen, I would love to be on the telly with Bendy. Well, we are, by the way, on the telly, sort of, because our podcasts are on YouTube. You know that, don't you? You can watch them, and they are recorded live, and this will be going out at some point on our podcast channel. So that's on YouTube, ZCZ Films, Waldy and Bendy podcast. Every week, these... Unfortunately, me and him are on there, and you've got to stare at us so you can hear us and look at us. I mean, I would love to do more. My great privilege at the moment is I've only just finished this series with somebody else that's in the room, a heroic TV persona that is Janina Ramirez. So Waldy and Nina's Adventures in Poland is heading your way soon. So that's our effort for that. But I mean, obviously, I'd love... You know, I don't know if I don't know if you'd like to work with me because it isn't usually slum it that way. But I would love to work with Bendy. I've learned so much from him. In all honesty, I really have. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, and on that note, that was absolutely amazing. I personally, I like this one, but then I didn't win. It was a good choice, Gloucester. Excellent choice. Both of you are incredible. I love listening to you. I could listen to you all evening. It just remains for me to say, if you're going to buy the books, please do. Please wait for them to be signed. And from the people of Gloucester, thank you.
So there you have it, the very first live edition of the Waldy and Bendy podcast, straight from the Great History Festival of Gloucester. Now, if you enjoyed that, please leave us some good comments and a bit of love on the internet, maybe some positive reviews or something like that. And above all, don't forget to subscribe to the ZCZ YouTube channel, because that's so important for us to know who's watching us and why. We love you all. We'll be back soon. We'll always be coming back, because this is the podcast they could not stop. But for now, it's a small bye-bye from me. And because he's not here, but he's letting me speak for him, a big bye-bye from the wonderful Bendy.
Waldy and Bendy.